The Awakening. This story is true. It happened on the night of October 13th, exactly 400 years after the first settlers set foot on Massachusetts soil. The Wampanoag people called that date the Day of Awakening, the day when what they had buried would return. I never believed in legends. I spent 12 years in the Marine Corps learning to trust only what I could see, touch, and kill. Superstition was for people who had never watched a bullet tear through flesh, who had never smelled the copper tang of blood pooling on foreign sand. But that night, standing in the parking lot of an auto parts store on the outskirts of Boston, I felt something I had not felt since my first combat deployment. That primal tingling at the base of my skull, that ancient instinct that screamed danger before the conscious mind could process why. My name is Marcus Cole, and if you are listening to this, pray you do not live in New England. The dashboard clock read 9:47 when I pulled into the industrial district. Friday night, the end of another week, turning wrenches at the garage where I had worked since leaving the Corps 5 years ago. My pickup truck rattled over potholes as I navigated the poorly lit streets, passing warehouses that had closed decades ago, and factory buildings with windows like dead eyes staring at nothing. I needed brake pads, simple errand, 30 minutes tops. The radio played some country song I had heard 1,000 times, the kind of music that filled silence without demanding attention. I kept the volume low, more habit than preference. In my line of work, both the one I left and the one I had now, you learn to listen. To the engine, to the road, to the quiet spaces between sounds where trouble liked to hide. The auto parts store sat at the end of the road, its neon sign buzzing and flickering against the overcast sky. I parked in the empty lot, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment. Something felt wrong. I could not explain it then, and I struggle to explain it now. The air hung thick and still the way it does before a thunderstorm when the atmosphere itself seems to hold its breath. But there were no clouds building on the horizon, no distant rumble of thunder, just that silence, that waiting. I stepped out of the truck, my boots crunching on gravel, and stretched muscles sore from 8 hours of labor. The smell of motor oil still clung to my hands despite the industrial soap I had scrubbed with. A familiar scent. Grounding. As I walked toward the entrance, I passed a weathered sign posted on the fence line. Most of the letters had faded, but I could still make out the words, Wampanoag Sacred Land. Please respect. Some kind of historical marker, the type you see scattered throughout Massachusetts like breadcrumbs leading to a past no one remembers. I did not give it a second thought. The store was nearly empty. A bored teenager worked the register, scrolling through his phone. Two men browsed the aisles, one of them muttering into a Bluetooth earpiece about a car that would not start. Normal, mundane. The kind of scene I had witnessed 1,000 times in 1,000 different stores. I found what I needed quickly. Brake pads, spark plugs, a roll of electrical tape, the essentials of a life built around fixing things other people had broken. I carried my items toward the register, already calculating the cost in my head. That was when the radio behind the counter changed. It happened mid-song, cutting from some ballad about lost love to a wall of static that made the teenager look up from his phone. The static crackled and popped, and then for just a moment, a voice broke through. Authorities have confirmed the closure of all borders in the state of Pennsylvania due to a viral outbreak of unprecedented speed. There are no official reports regarding the nature of the virus at this time, but residents are urged to remain indoors and await further updates. The message lasted maybe 10 seconds before the static swallowed it again, and then the country song resumed as if nothing had happened. The teenager frowned at the radio, smacked it once with his palm, and shrugged. "Weird," he said. I nodded, paid for my items, and walked back outside. Pennsylvania. That was only a few hours west, close enough to matter if something serious was happening, but the message had been garbled, fragmented. Could have been anything. A prank broadcast, a glitch in the system, the kind of random noise that modern technology sometimes produced. I told myself it was nothing. The same way I had told myself it was nothing when my hand started shaking after I came home from overseas. The same way I had told myself it was nothing when I woke at 3 in the morning with my dead brother's face burned into my vision. Some things you bury because looking at them too long will break you. I reached my truck and stopped. A crow sat on the hood, black feathers gleaming under the sickly glow of the parking lot lights. It stared at me with one eye, head cocked at an angle that seemed almost curious. I waved my hand to shoo it away. It did not move. Another crow landed beside it. Then another. Then 5 more descending from the darkness above to perch on my truck like they had been waiting for me. They arranged themselves in a row across the hood, all facing the same direction, all staring with that same unblinking intensity. I had seen strange animal behavior before. In Afghanistan, the local dogs would sometimes gather before an attack, sensing vibrations in the ground or changes in the air pressure that human senses could not detect. Animals knew things. They felt things. But this was different. These birds were not afraid. They were not curious. They were watching me the way a predator watches prey, with patience and purpose. I got in the truck, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. In my rear-view mirror, the crows remained on their perches, their heads turning to follow my departure. The drive back toward the main road took me through the industrial district, past shuttered businesses and empty lots overgrown with weeds. Streetlights flickered as I passed beneath them one after another, a ripple of darkness that seemed to follow my progress. The radio crackled again. I reached for the dial, but before I could touch it, the static resolved into something else. Not a voice this time. A whisper, soft and indistinct, like someone speaking from very far away or from very close to death. I could not make out the words, but I felt them crawl beneath my skin and settle in my bones like a cold that no amount of warmth could chase away. My grandfather used to tell me stories. He had Wampanoag blood in him, though he rarely spoke of it, preferring to let that part of his heritage sleep undisturbed. But sometimes late at night, when the bourbon had loosened his tongue, he would speak of the old days, of the things his ancestors had known. Before the white men came, he told me once, our people fought something that crawled up from the earth, a hunger that could not be satisfied, a sickness that turned men into beasts. We called it the hunger because it had no other name, no name we dared speak aloud. I was maybe 10 years old, sitting on his porch in the summer darkness, swatting at mosquitoes and pretending not to be scared. What happened to it, I asked. We could not kill it, my grandfather said. Nothing can kill hunger. But we buried it, deep, where the sun could not find it and the earth could keep it sleeping. And then he looked at me with eyes that seemed suddenly too old for his face. The old one said it would wake someday. When the land decided to take its revenge, I had forgotten that story, buried it the way I buried everything else that did not fit into the neat, rational world I had constructed for myself, the world of mechanics and measurements of problems that could be solved with the right tools and enough patience. But driving through those empty streets with the radio whispering things I could not understand and the streetlights dying one by one above me, the memory returned with a clarity that made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. Just a story. Just an old man's superstition. That is what I told myself. I turned onto the main road, heading toward the on-ramp that would take me back to my apartment. The shops and restaurants of the commercial district scrolled past my windows. Friday night, and the sidewalk should have been crowded with people enjoying the start of the weekend, but something was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the car parked at the curb with its door hanging open, engine still running, no driver in sight. Then the storefront with the shattered window glass scattered across the pavement like scattered teeth. Then the woman. She stood in the middle of the sidewalk, utterly still, facing away from me. She wore a business suit, the kind you see on people who work in offices and take calls during lunch. Her hair was dark, pulled back in a ponytail that had come partially undone. I slowed as I approached, some instinct warning me not to stop completely. The woman's head turned, not her body, just her head rotating with an unnatural smoothness until she was looking directly at me. Her eyes were white, not the white of blindness or cataracts, the white of something that had consumed whatever color had once been there, leaving nothing but emptiness. She opened her mouth, and the sound that emerged was not human. It was a shriek, a howl, a noise that seemed to bypass my ears entirely and stab directly into the primitive part of my brain that still remembered what it meant to be prey. She ran at my truck, not the stumbling gait of someone drunk or injured. She ran like a predator, like something that had forgotten the limitations of human flesh and was operating on pure instinct. Her hands slammed against my window, and I saw that her fingers were bent at wrong angles, the nails cracked and bloody. I floored the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tearing away from her grasping hands. In my mirror, I saw her fall, saw her scramble back to her feet, saw her start running after me with a speed that should have been impossible. And behind her, emerging from the shadows between buildings, more figures appeared. Dozens of them. Hundreds, moving with that same terrible purpose, that same hunger. The stoplight ahead turned red. I did not stop. The intersection exploded with noise as I blew through it, horns, blaring tires, screeching. A delivery van swerved to avoid me, clipping a parked car and spinning out. I kept driving, my heart hammering against my ribs, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The highway on-ramp was just ahead. Escape, safety. I almost made it. The truck hit me from the side at 60 miles per hour, T-boning my pickup with a force that crumpled the door like aluminum foil. The world spun. Glass exploded around me. Metal screamed. I felt my head strike something hard, felt warmth spreading across my face, felt the seatbelt cut into my chest as the truck rolled once, twice, and came to rest on its wheels with a groan of tortured metal. Silence. Then slowly the sounds returned. The hiss of steam from a ruptured radiator. The distant wail of sirens. The screaming, so much screaming coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I tried to move, but pain lanced through my body. My vision swam with dark spots. Blood dripped from my forehead into my eyes, painting the world red. Through the cracked remains of my windshield, I could see them coming. The figures. Dozens of them, moving toward me with that awful, purposeful stride. But that was not what made my blood freeze. Standing among them, towering above the rest, was a shadow. A shape that seemed to drink the light around it, leaving nothing but darkness in its wake. It had no face that I could see, no features I could describe. It was simply absence, given form void, wrapped in the suggestion of humanity, and it was looking at me. Not with eyes, because it had no eyes, but with an attention so focused, so absolute, that I felt it press against my mind like fingers probing a wound. The Wampanoag had a saying my grandfather told me once. The hunger does not choose its victims at random. It chooses those who have been running for too long. I had been running my whole life. From the memory of the car crash that killed my parents and brother when I was 19. From the faces of the men I had killed in service to my country. From the loneliness that had become my only constant companion. And now, trapped in the wreckage of my truck, bleeding and broken, I realized the truth. I had been running from something I could not escape, and it had finally found me. The shadow moved closer, gliding through the crowd of figures like a shark through water. The creatures parted before it, their white eyes fixed on me with a hunger that seemed almost reverential. In that moment, I understood something that would haunt me for whatever remained of my life. This was not a disease, not in any sense that modern medicine would recognize. This was something older, something that had slept beneath the earth for 400 years, waiting for the right moment to wake. Something that the first peoples of this land had fought and failed to destroy, choosing instead to bury it deep and pray it never stirred. But someone had dug it up. Someone had set it free. And now, on the 400th anniversary of the day, the first settlers arrived to claim this land as their own. The hunger had returned to collect what it was owed. The shadow stopped 10 feet from my truck. I could feel its presence like a weight on my chest, like a hand closing around my heart. It did not move, did not speak, did not do anything at all. It simply waited. And in the distance, growing closer with every passing second, came the sound of 100 voices raised in a scream that had no words, only need. The day of awakening had begun, and I was right in the middle of it. The first lesson of survival is simple: keep moving or die. I learned that in boot camp, relearned it in Afghanistan, and had it burned into my bones during 12 years of combat deployments. But nothing in my training had prepared me for what waited outside that crumpled truck. Nothing in any manual had explained how to fight an enemy that should not exist. The shadow still watched me through the shattered windshield, patient, eternal, and all around it the infected gathered like worshippers at an altar, their white eyes gleaming with reflected firelight from the burning city. I had maybe 30 seconds before they reached me. The truck's frame groaned as I forced the crumpled door open, metal scraping against metal with a shriek that made my teeth ache. Blood ran into my eyes from the gash on my forehead, turning the world into a red-tinted nightmare. Every breath sent fire through my ribs. My left leg throbbed with a pain that suggested something was torn, maybe broken. None of that mattered. I crawled out of the wreckage and ran, not gracefully, not heroically. I stumbled and lurched like a drunk, my injured leg threatening to buckle with every step. Behind me, the screaming started a chorus of inhuman voices raised in what might have been triumph or hunger or something my mind refused to categorize. The streets had become a war zone. Cars burned in intersections. Bodies lay sprawled on sidewalks, some still twitching, others being fed upon by creatures that had once been their neighbors, their friends, their family. I saw a man in a business suit crouched over a woman in a yoga outfit, his face buried in her throat, his hands pulling at her flesh with methodical precision. I saw a child no more than 8 years old standing in the doorway of a convenience store with blood dripping from her chin and a severed hand clutched to her chest like a teddy bear. I saw David Miller. The name on his employee badge was still visible, spattered with gore, but legible. David Miller, accountant. I had met him once, maybe twice, when he brought his car into the garage for an oil change. Pleasant guy. Talked about his daughter's soccer games and his wife's promotion at work. Now he knelt in the middle of the street, his expensive suit torn, and stained his fingers digging into the chest cavity of a corpse I could not identify. When I ran past, he looked up. His eyes were white, his mouth was red, and for just a moment I thought I saw something flicker behind those empty eyes. Recognition, memory. Then he snarled and lunged. I dodged my injured leg, screaming in protest, and kept running. David's fingers scraped across my jacket, tearing fabric but missing flesh. I did not look back. I could not afford to look back. An office building loomed ahead, its lobby dark but its doors intact. I crashed through the entrance, stumbled over an overturned security desk, and made for the stairwell. Behind me, I heard the door shatter as things that used to be people poured into the building. Up. I had to go up. The rooftops offered escape routes, vantage points, options that the ground level did not. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my heart threatening to burst through my chest. 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. On the 6th floor, I found the door to the stairwell blocked by a filing cabinet. Someone had been here before me. Someone who knew the same survival tricks I did. I squeezed through the gap between the cabinet and the wall, emerging into a dark hallway that smelled of dust and old coffee. The emergency lighting had failed here, leaving only the faint glow from windows at either end of the corridor. I took 3 steps before the knife pressed against my throat. "You make too much noise." The voice came from behind me, low and rough, carrying the exhaustion of someone who had already seen too much. I felt the blade's edge kiss my skin, not quite breaking it, a warning rather than an attack. "They will find you if you keep stumbling around like that." I raised my hand slowly. Former Marine. 12 years of combat training. But in that moment, with my body broken and my mind reeling, I was just another survivor hoping the person behind me was still human enough to listen. "I am not one of them," I said. The knife withdrew. A flashlight clicked on its beam, sweeping across my face, making me squint. No, the voice agreed. You are not, but you might as well be making noise like that. The man who stepped into view was somewhere in his early 40s with a face that looked like it had been carved from weathered wood. A hunting knife gleamed in one hand. His clothes were dirty and torn, but his eyes were sharp, alert, alive. "Daniel Reeves," he said. "People call me Danny. Marcus Cole." Danny studied me for a long moment, then nodded toward a door at the end of the hall. "I have a room secured. You look like you need to sit down before you fall down." I wanted to argue. Pride demanded that I prove I was not as weak as I looked, but my leg chose that moment to give out, and I would have collapsed if Danny had not caught my arm. "Easy," he said. "Save the tough guy act for when we are not surrounded by things that want to eat us." He half carried me to the room at the end of the hall, a corner office with windows overlooking the burning city. Filing cabinets blocked the door. The desk had been pushed against the wall, creating a small, clear space in the center where a sleeping bag and a few supplies were arranged with military precision. Danny lowered me onto the sleeping bag and handed me a bottle of water. I drank greedily, the liquid washing away some of the taste of smoke and blood that coated my throat. "How long," I asked when I could speak again, "how long has this been happening?" Danny sat with his back against the wall, the knife resting across his knees. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning the windows, the door, the shadows in the corners. "Started tonight," he said. "Few hours ago, maybe. Hard to tell. Time gets slippery when the world ends." I thought of the radio broadcast I had heard in the auto parts store. The closed borders in Pennsylvania. The virus that spread too fast to contain. "Do you know what caused it?" I asked. Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed, becoming flatter, emptier, like a man reciting facts about someone else's tragedy. "I am a hunter," he said. "Live outside the city up near the old Wampanoag territories. Got a cabin there with my wife and son, Tommy. He was 8 years old. Was. The past tense hung in the air like a blade. I was out hunting when it started," Danny continued. "Heard the sirens, saw the smoke. Drove home as fast as I could." He stopped. His hand tightened on the knife handle until his knuckles went white. When I got there, my wife was in the kitchen. She was eating our son, right there on the table where we had breakfast every morning. She looked up when I came in, looked at me with those white eyes, and she smiled. I did not know what to say. There were no words for that kind of horror, no comfort that could touch that depth of pain. "I had to shoot them," Danny said. "Both of them. With the rifle I was going to teach Tommy to use next year." The silence stretched between us, heavy with grief and the distant sounds of chaos from the streets below. "I'm sorry," I said, because it was all I could say. Danny shook his head. "Being sorry does not change anything. Nothing changes anything now." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something that caught the faint light from the window. A stone black as midnight, carved with symbols I did not recognize. It was small enough to fit in his palm, but even from across the room I could feel something emanating from it. A coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. "Found this in my wife's things," Danny said. "She wore it as a necklace. Said she bought it at a flea market a few weeks ago." He turned the stone over in his fingers, and I saw that the symbols seemed to shift and writhe, though that could have been a trick of the dim light. "Before everything went to hell, I saw some people digging up at the old sacred grounds. Archaeologists, I figured. Had all the equipment, the university logos on their trucks. My neighbor, an old Wampanoag man, he saw them too. Got real upset. Told me they did not know what they were waking up. Danny tossed the stone to me. I caught it reflexively, and the moment it touched my skin, I heard something. A whisper, faint and far away, speaking words I could not understand, but somehow felt. Hungry words, patient words. I dropped the stone like it had burned me. "What the hell is that?" I demanded. Danny picked it up and tucked it back into his pocket. "I do not know, but I think it is connected to whatever is happening out there. And I think someone dug up something that should have stayed buried. I thought of my grandfather's stories. The hunger, the thing that crawled up from the earth, the sickness that turned men into beasts. The Wampanoag buried something here, I said slowly, centuries ago, something they could not kill. Danny looked at me with new interest. You know the stories. My grandfather had some native blood. He used to tell me legends when I was a kid. I never believed them. Believe them now, Danny said, because whatever is out there, it is not just a virus. It is something that has been waiting a very long time for this night. We rested for an hour, maybe two. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body demanding sleep while my mind refused to fully surrender. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David Miller's face, that flicker of recognition behind the white emptiness of his gaze. Danny shook me awake when the first gray light of dawn began to seep through the windows. The city still burned, but the screaming had subsided, replaced by an eerie quiet that was somehow worse. We need to move, Danny said. Staying in one place too long is a death sentence. Where do we go? Danny produced a folded map from his pack, spreading it on the floor between us. His finger traced a route through the streets, avoiding main roads and open spaces. There was a broadcast on the military frequency, he said. Helicopter evacuation at St. Mary's Hospital. Rooftop pickup. If there is any way out of this city, that is it. St. Mary's was maybe 3 miles away. 3 miles through streets filled with things that wanted to tear us apart. The surface roads are suicide, Danny continued. But I used to work maintenance for the city back before I moved out to the country. I know the sewer system. We can get close to the hospital without going above ground. The sewers, of course, because this night had not been enough of a horror show already. I pushed myself to my feet, testing my injured leg. It hurt, but it held. Good enough. Let us go, I said. The entrance to the sewer system was in an alley 2 blocks from the office building. We moved through the streets like ghosts, staying in the shadows, freezing whenever we heard movement nearby. The creatures seemed slower in the daylight, more sluggish, but they were still dangerous, still hungry. Danny pried the manhole cover loose, and the smell that rose from below made me gag. Rot, waste, something else underneath it all, something sweet and wrong. Stay close, Danny whispered, and keep quiet. Sound carries down there. We descended into darkness. The sewer tunnels were everything I had feared and worse. The walls glistened with moisture and other substances I did not want to identify. The water that sloshed around our ankles was thick, viscous, carrying debris that bumped against our legs as we walked. And the smell, that pervasive stench of decay and excrement, coated the inside of my nose and throat until I could taste it. But the worst part was the sounds, not the dripping of water or the echo of our footsteps. Those were expected, almost comforting in their normalcy. What made my skin crawl was the other sounds, the groans that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, the splashing that did not match our movements, the breathing wet and labored that I could hear in the darkness ahead. "They are down here too," I whispered. Danny nodded, his flashlight cutting a narrow beam through the blackness. "Some of them probably came down to escape the sunlight. We need to be careful." We moved through the maze of tunnels, Danny navigating from memory. Several times we had to double back when we encountered groups of creatures blocking our path. They stood in the darkness, swaying slightly, their white eyes reflecting our flashlight like mirrors. They did not seem to see us, or perhaps they did not care. They were waiting for something. The radio in my pocket crackled. I had forgotten I even had it, a small handheld unit I kept in my truck for emergencies. The battery was nearly dead, but somehow it had survived the crash. I pulled it out, and the static that poured from the speaker seemed deafening in the enclosed space. "Turn it off," Danny hissed. I fumbled with the controls, but before I could silence it, a voice emerged from the static. Not a broadcast, not a message, a whisper. "Marcus," my blood went cold. "Marcus Cole, we see you, we know you." The voice was not human. It was layered, multiple tones, speaking in unison, harmonizing in a way that made my skull ache. "You carry such delicious pain, Marcus. The crash that stole your family, the blood on your hands from foreign wars, the emptiness you try so hard to fill. I jabbed the power button, and the radio went silent. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. Danny stared at me. What the hell was that? I do not know, I said, but it knew my name. It knew things about me that nobody knows. Danny's expression hardened. They are playing games, trying to get in our heads. Do not let them. He was right. I knew he was right. But the whisper had known things it should not have known, things I had never told anyone. And the hunger in that voice, the patient, ancient hunger, made my skin crawl with a fear I could not name. We kept moving. It found us 20 minutes later. At first I thought it was just another creature, another shambling corpse blocking our path. But then I heard the sound it made. Not a groan or a snarl. A wet, bubbling cough like lungs filled with fluid trying desperately to expel something they could not contain. Danny froze. What is that? The flashlight beam found it, and I wished it had not. The thing that stood in the tunnel ahead had once been human. That much was clear from its general shape, the suggestion of arms and legs and a head. But it had changed, mutated. Its body was swollen with tumors, its skin stretched thin over masses of tissue that pulsed with their own rhythm. Its mouth hung open, and from within, something moved. Something long and wet and glistening. A tongue. Except it was not a tongue, not really. It was a tentacle, a proboscis, an appendage that should not exist in any world governed by natural law. And around the creature a green mist swirled. Thick and acrid, it stung my eyes and burned my throat the moment I inhaled it. "Cover your mouth," Danny commanded, pulling his shirt up over his nose. I did the same, but already my head was swimming. The toxin in that mist was affecting me, slowing my thoughts, making my limbs feel heavy. The creature's head turned toward us. It could not see, I realized. Its eyes were gone, replaced by more of those tumorous growths. But it could hear. It could smell. It knew we were there. The tongue shot out. I've never seen anything move that fast. One moment, Danny was standing beside me. The next, he was wrapped in that glistening appendage, lifted off his feet, being dragged toward the creature's gaping mouth. Danny screamed. The sound echoed through the tunnels, bouncing off walls, multiplying until it seemed like a dozen voices crying out in terror. I moved without thinking. The bat I had grabbed from a sporting goods section in the office building swung in a wide arc, connecting with the tongue. The impact jarred my arms, but the appendage recoiled, loosening its grip on Danny. The creature shrieked. The sound was nothing like the screams of the other infected. It was metallic grinding like nails on a chalkboard, combined with the death rattle of something drowning in its own fluids. Danny hit the ground hard, but rolled to his feet immediately, his knife already in hand. He slashed at the tongue as it came for him again, severing a section that writhed on the tunnel floor like a dying snake. "Run," he gasped. "The exit is ahead. Run." We ran. Behind us, the creature's shrieks echoed through the tunnels, joined by other sounds, groans, footsteps. The things in the sewers had heard the commotion, and they were coming. The ladder to the surface appeared in Danny's flashlight beam, rusted iron rungs leading up to a metal grate. I climbed first, shoving the grate aside with a strength born of pure adrenaline. Danny followed, and we emerged into the gray light of early morning, gasping for clean air. We were in an alley behind a row of shops. The street beyond was empty except for abandoned cars and scattered debris. In the distance, I could see the towers of St. Mary's Hospital rising above the surrounding buildings. So close. We were so close. That was when we heard the screams. Not the inhuman shrieks of the infected. Human screams. Terrified, desperate, alive. Danny and I exchanged a glance. We did not need to speak. We both knew what we had to do. We found them a block away, trapped in a sedan, surrounded by infected. A young woman and a young man, both Asian American, both pressed against the windows of the car as dead hands pounded against the glass. Danny grabbed a metal trash can lid and hurled it down the street. The clatter drew the attention of the infected, and they turned their white eyes, tracking the source of the sound. They moved toward it, leaving the car unguarded. Now Danny hissed. We ran to the car. I yanked open the driver's door while Danny covered me. The young woman stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. "Move," I said. "We are getting you out of here." They did not argue. The woman, maybe 25, climbed out first, followed by the man, younger, maybe 20. They were both shaking, both covered in sweat and tears, but they were alive. "I am Sarah," the woman said. "Sarah Chen." "This is my brother Tyler." "Save the introductions," Danny said. "We need to go." We ran for the hospital. The infected had realized they had been tricked, and their howls echoed through the empty streets as they gave chase. But we were faster driven by fear and hope and the desperate need to survive. The hospital's rear entrance was ahead. We were going to make it. And then Sarah stopped. She was staring at the wall of the hospital, at something that made the color drain from her face. I followed her gaze and felt my own blood turn to ice. Photographs. Dozens of them taped to the brick in neat rows. Pictures of patients, doctors, nurses. All of them marked with symbols I had seen before, the same symbols carved into the black stone in Danny's pocket, and in the center of them all, one photograph larger than the rest. A woman in nurse's scrubs. Her name tag read, "Linda Chen, head nurse." Sarah's mother. Below the photograph, written in what looked horribly like dried blood, were words that made Sarah's knees buckle. "She is still here. She is waiting for you." From somewhere inside the hospital, a voice drifted out. A woman's voice, soft and loving and utterly wrong. "Sarah, my baby girl, Mommy is here. Come inside. Come to Mommy." Sarah trembled. Tyler grabbed her arm, his face pale. "That is not Mom," he said. "Sarah, that is not Mom." But Sarah was not listening. She was staring at the door to the hospital, at the darkness beyond. And in her eyes I saw something that terrified me more than any monster. Hope. The most dangerous weapon the hunger possessed was not teeth or claws or infectious bites. It was the faces of people we had lost, and it knew exactly how to use them against us. The hospital doors hung open like a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. Beyond them, darkness pooled thick and absolute, broken only by the faint red glow of emergency lighting that pulsed like a diseased heartbeat. The smell that wafted out was a mixture of antiseptic and rot, the clean chemical scent of a medical facility overlaid with something sweet and wrong. Decay. Death. The particular stench of flesh that had stopped being alive but had not stopped moving. Sarah stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the photograph of her mother taped to the wall. Tyler gripped her arm, trying to pull her back, but she did not move, could not move. The voice from inside the hospital continued to call, soft and loving and utterly inhuman. "Sarah, baby, Mommy missed you so much. Come inside, let me hold you again. That is not your mother." Danny said, his voice hard. "Whatever is in there, it is using her voice to lure you in. Do not listen." Sarah shook her head slowly. "You do not understand. I never got to say goodbye. She called me that night when everything started. She told me to stay inside to keep Tyler safe, and then the line went dead. Tears streamed down her face. I need to know what happened to her. I need to see." I understood. God help me, I understood completely. The not knowing was its own kind of torture, a wound that never healed because you could never stop picking at it. I had spent years wondering if my brother had suffered in those final moments of the car crash, if he had called out for me, if he had died thinking I could have saved him. Some questions destroy you whether you answer them or not. "We go in together," I said. "We find the way to the roof we call for extraction, and we get out. But we do it together." Danny looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he checked his rifle, confirmed the round in the chamber, and nodded. "Stay close, stay quiet. And if something comes at you that looks like someone you knew, shoot it in the head. Do not hesitate." We entered the hospital. The lobby was a charnel house. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, some in hospital gowns, others in the scrubs of medical staff. Many had been partially consumed, their chests torn open, their faces frozen in expressions of final terror, but others showed no visible wounds at all. They simply lay there, eyes open, staring at nothing, as if they had died of something that left no mark on the flesh. The emergency lights painted everything in shades of crimson, turning the white tile floors into rivers of apparent blood. Our footsteps echoed in the silence, impossibly loud despite our attempts at stealth. The air was cold, far colder than it should have been, and our breath misted before our faces like ghosts escaping our lungs. "Medical records," Sarah whispered, pointing toward a door marked Administration. "If there is any documentation about what happened here, patient 0, the first infection, it would be in there." Danny shook his head. "We do not have time for research. The roof is our priority." But Sarah was already moving toward the door. "I did 2 years of nursing school before transferring to emergency medicine. I know how hospitals document outbreaks. If we can find out how this started, maybe we can find out how to stop it." She had a point. A slim one, but more than we had otherwise. I looked at Danny, who cursed under his breath but did not stop her. 2 minutes, he said, then we move. The records room was small and cluttered, filing cabinets lining the walls, a computer terminal dark and useless without power. Sarah moved with practiced efficiency, pulling drawers, scanning labels, searching for something specific. She found it in the third cabinet she opened. "Patient 0, she said, her voice trembling as she read from the file. "Jonathan Blackwood, occupation archaeologist, Harvard University, admitted October 13th at 8:47 p.m. Presented with extreme agitation, violent behavior, multiple bite wounds on arms and torso." She flipped through the pages. Notes say he was found at an excavation site, Wampanoag sacred ground. He was part of a team digging up artifacts from a burial site that dated back to pre-colonial times. Danny and I exchanged glances. The dig site. The old man who had warned that they did not know what they were waking up. "There is more," Sarah continued. Attending physician noted unusual symptoms. Body temperature significantly below normal. Pupils unresponsive. Patient kept repeating phrases in an unknown language. They thought he was in some kind of psychotic break, maybe drugs or a reaction to something at the dig site. She stopped reading. Her face had gone pale. "There is a photograph," she said. She turned the file toward us. The picture showed a man in his 30s, handsome in an academic way with wire-rimmed glasses and a neatly trimmed beard. He was strapped to a hospital bed, his eyes wide and wild, his mouth open in what might have been a scream or a laugh. And around his neck, clearly visible in the photograph, was a pendant, a black stone, carved with symbols that seemed to writhe even in the frozen image, the same stone Danny carried in his pocket. "Son of a bitch," Danny breathed. "They brought it back. Whatever was buried at that site, they dug it up and brought it right into the heart of the city." Sarah closed the file, her hands shaking. "There's a note at the bottom. Last entry before the record stopped. It says the patient died at 9:15 p.m. Heart stopped, no respiration, brain activity ceased." She looked up at us, and in her eyes I saw the horror of what she was about to say. And then he woke up, 20 minutes later, and he started biting everyone in the room. Patient 0, the first infection. The moment the hunger stopped sleeping and started to feed, we had our answer. Not that it helped us, not that knowing the origin of a plague made the plague any less deadly. But at least now we understood what we were fighting. Not a virus, not in any natural sense, a curse, an ancient evil that had been imprisoned in the earth for 400 years and had finally been set free by men who did not believe in such things. A sound from the hallway made us all freeze, footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. And then the voice again, clearer, now closer. "Sarah, I know you are here. I can smell you, baby. You smell just like you did when you were little, when I used to hold you and sing you to sleep." Sarah's face crumpled. "Mom." Danny grabbed her arm. "That is not your mother. Your mother is dead. Whatever is out there killed her and is wearing her like a costume. Do not forget that." But Sarah was not listening. She was staring at the door, at the shadow that had appeared in the frosted glass window. A silhouette that was human-shaped but wrong, somehow proportioned in ways that made my eyes ache. The door swung open, and there she was. Linda Chen, head nurse, Sarah and Tyler's mother. She still wore her scrubs, though they were stained with blood and other fluids. Her hair hung loose around her face, tangled and matted. She stood in the doorway with her arms open as if waiting for an embrace, but her eyes were not eyes anymore. They were pits of darkness deeper than any shadow, and from them seeped a black fluid that ran down her cheeks like tears of oil. Her mouth was stretched in a smile, but it was too wide, the corners extending past where human lips should end, revealing teeth that had become jagged and sharp. And behind her in the hallway I could see others gathering, dozens of them. Patients and doctors and nurses, all with the same wide eyes and hungry mouths, all watching us with an attention that felt like pressure against my skull. "My babies," the thing wearing Linda Chen's face said. The voice shifted as it spoke, layering over itself, becoming multiple voices speaking in harmony. "Come to Mommy. Let me hold you one last time." Sarah took a step forward. Tyler grabbed her. "Sarah, no, that is not her. You know that is not her." The creature's head tilted. Its smile did not waver. "Your mother cried when I ate her," the voices said, harmonizing in a way that made my stomach heave. "She called your names. Sarah, Tyler. She begged me to spare you. She offered herself in your place." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Stop. Please stop. But I do not want a substitute." The creature took a step forward. "I want all of you, every last piece, every memory, every drop of blood. I have been so hungry, children, so hungry for so long." Its mouth opened wider and wider. The skin at the corners of its lips began to tear, splitting with a wet sound that made me want to scream. The jaw unhinged, like a snake's, revealing a throat that descended into darkness, a passage that seemed to go on forever. And it screamed. Not the shriek of the infected we had fought before. This was something else entirely. A sound that bypassed the ears and struck directly at the primitive core of the brain, the part that remembered what it meant to be prey. It was a sound of hunger and rage and triumph, a sound that said, "I have waited so long, and now you are mine." The scream echoed through the hospital, and from every floor, every room, every dark corner where the infected had been hiding, answering screams rose in response. They were coming, all of them, summoned by the creature that had once been Sarah's mother. "Run!" Danny roared, grabbing Sarah and shoving her toward the back of the records room. "Fire escape, now!" We ran. Behind us, the creature did not pursue. It did not need to. It had called the horde, and the horde would do its work for it. I could hear them pouring into the hospital from every entrance, a tide of dead flesh and hungry mouths flooding the corridors. The fire escape door burst open under Danny's shoulder, and we piled into the stairwell. Emergency lighting cast everything in that same bloody red glow. Below us I could hear footsteps ascending. Above us more footsteps descending. Trapped. Up, Danny decided. The roof is still our only chance. We climbed, floor after floor, our lungs burning, our legs screaming. The infected poured into the stairwell behind us, a river of grasping hands and gnashing teeth. I fired down at them. The shotguns roared, deafening in the enclosed space, and bodies tumbled back down the stairs. But for every one I killed, 3 more took its place. Tyler stumbled. His ankle, injured in the car, gave out on the landing between floors. He went down hard, crying out in pain. A creature lunged at him from the shadows. Sarah screamed and threw herself forward, the knife Danny had given her flashing in the dim light. The blade sank into the creature's eye socket, and it collapsed, twitching at Tyler's feet. She stared at the thing she had just killed. It had been a nurse once, judging by the scrubs. Someone who had dedicated their life to healing others, to easing suffering, to saving lives. Now it was nothing but meat cooling on the concrete floor. Sarah's hands trembled, but she did not freeze. She grabbed Tyler's arm and hauled him to his feet, half carrying him up the next flight of stairs. In that moment, I saw her mother in her, the real Linda Chen, the woman who had called her daughter to warn her, who had stayed on the line until the monsters came for her, the woman who had raised a daughter capable of doing whatever it took to protect the one she loved. The thing wearing Linda's face had tried to corrupt that memory. It had failed. We burst through the door under the roof. The cold air hit me like a slap, clean and sharp after the stench of the hospital. The city spread out below us, burning in a dozen places, the smoke rising to blot out the stars. Dawn was still hours away, the sky above us a canvas of black and orange where flames reflected off the low-hanging clouds. And in the center of the roof, exactly where the broadcast had promised, was a military radio installation, equipment cabinets, an antenna array, a transmitter still blinking with power. We were not alone. Bodies lay scattered across the rooftop. Soldiers judging by their uniforms. They'd been torn apart, their weapons scattered around them, their blood pooling in the gaps between concrete slabs. Whatever had happened here, the military had tried to hold this position. They had failed. Danny grabbed a rifle from one of the fallen soldiers, checking the magazine. Half full, better than nothing. I reached the radio and started working the controls. Static crackled from the speaker, and then a voice distant and distorted by interference. "This is Rescue 7. Any survivors on this frequency, please respond." I grabbed the microphone. "This is Marcus Cole. I have 3 other survivors on the rooftop of St. Mary's Hospital. We need immediate extraction." A pause. Then the voice returned clearer now. "Copy that, St. Mary S. We have a bird inbound to your location. ETA 15 minutes. Hold your position. 15 minutes. An eternity under the circumstances." I turned to tell the others, and that was when I saw Tyler's face. He was staring at something behind me, his eyes wide, his mouth open in a silent scream. I spun around. They were coming up the fire escape, pouring out of every door, climbing the walls themselves, their fingers finding purchase in the brickwork like spiders scaling a web, dozens of them, hundreds. And at their head, walking calmly through the chaos, was the thing that had been Linda Chen. Its mouth had returned to something approximating normal, but its eyes still wept that black fluid, and its smile still stretched too wide. 15 minutes, it said, and its voice carried across the rooftop like a whisper in my ear. So much can happen in 15 minutes. Danny opened fire. The rifle chattered and creatures fell, but more kept coming. I grabbed a weapon from the ground and joined him, shotgun roaring the kick, bruising my shoulder with every shot. Sarah and Tyler took cover behind an air conditioning unit, Tyler's injured ankle making him a liability in a firefight. Sarah had found a pistol somewhere, and she fired with surprising accuracy, each shot finding its mark. But it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The horde overwhelmed our barricades, our bullets, our desperate resistance. They came at us from every direction, and we fell back, until we were pressed against the edge of the roof with nowhere left to go. And then the rumbling started. I felt it before I heard it, a vibration in the concrete beneath my feet. Then came the sound, a deep bass growl that seemed to come from the earth itself. The creatures on the roof paused, their heads turning toward the edge of the building. Something was climbing. I saw the hand first. It was massive, easily the size of a car tire, the fingers thick as tree branches, the nails cracked and yellow and long as kitchen knives. It gripped the edge of the roof and pulled, and more of the thing came into view. An arm, a shoulder, a head. The creature that hauled itself onto the roof was like nothing I had seen before. It was humanoid technically, but the proportions were all wrong. One shoulder was twice the size of the other, bulging with muscle that rippled beneath skin the color and texture of old leather. Its arms were long enough to drag on the ground, and its chest was a barrel of solid meat that heaved with each breath. Its face was almost an afterthought, small and squashed atop that massive body, but its eyes burned with an intelligence that the other infected lacked. This was not a mindless creature driven by hunger. This was a predator. It threw back its head and roared, and the sound shook the building to its foundations. The other infected scattered, clearing a path, paying homage to the apex monster in their midst. Tank Danny breathed. The word seemed to fit. The tank's eyes found us, its lips peeled back in something that might have been a smile. And then it charged. There's no describing the speed of something that large. Your brain insists it cannot be possible that physics forbids a creature of that mass moving with that velocity. And then it is on top of you, and physics becomes irrelevant. Danny dove one way. I dove the other. The tank's fist came down where we had been standing, cracking the concrete like an eggshell. "Scatter," I screamed. "Do not let it focus on one target." We split up, running in different directions, firing at the creature whenever we had a clear shot. Bullets struck its hide and barely penetrated. It was like shooting at a wall. The tank roared in annoyance rather than pain and swung at Danny, missing by inches. "The grenade," Tyler yelled. One of the soldiers had a grenade. I spotted it clipped to the belt of a fallen soldier 10 feet away. The tank was between me and it. I ran anyway. The creature saw me coming and swung. I ducked, feeling the wind of its passing ruffle my hair, and rolled under its arm. My fingers closed around the grenade just as the tank's other fist caught me in the side. The impact lifted me off my feet and threw me across the roof. I hit the concrete hard, felt ribs crack, felt blood fill my mouth. The world went gray at the edges. Through the haze of pain, I saw Danny grab the grenade from where it had fallen from my hand. He pulled the pin. "Hey, ugly," he shouted. The tank turned. Danny threw the grenade directly at its face. The explosion was blinding. The tank staggered back, one side of its head a ruin of charred flesh and exposed bone. It screamed a sound of pure rage and swung blindly at the air. Sarah and Tyler had found a propane tank, the kind used for rooftop heating. They rolled it toward the creature, and Sarah raised her pistol. "Get clear," she yelled. She fired. The propane exploded in a fireball that engulfed the tank's upper body. It stumbled, flailing flames licking across its massive frame. For a moment I thought we had done it. Then the tank charged again. Blind, burning, dying, it charged. Straight at me. I could not move. My ribs were broken, my lungs were filling with blood, and the world was spinning too fast for me to find my feet. I watched the burning mountain of flesh come at me and knew that I was about to die. Danny hit the tank from the side. It was not enough to stop it, not nearly enough, but it was enough to deflect its course. The creature's momentum carried it past me toward the edge of the roof, and Danny was still on its back, still hitting it, still fighting, even though there was no possible way he could win. The tank went over the edge. Danny went with it. "No," I screamed, or tried to scream. The word came out as a gurgle, blood and air mixing in my throat. Sarah was at my side, her hands pressing against my chest, trying to stop bleeding I could not feel. Tyler was firing at the remaining infected, keeping them back, buying us seconds we did not have. "The helicopter," Sarah said. "I can hear it. The helicopter is coming." I turned my head. In the distance, getting closer lights in the sky, rotors beating the air, salvation. But Danny was gone, fallen with the monster. Sacrificed so that we could live. The helicopter descended toward the roof. The infected scattered from the downdraft, and soldiers in the cabin opened fire, clearing a landing zone. Hands reached down and grabbed us, pulling us aboard. As we lifted off, I looked down at the rooftop at the carnage we were leaving behind, and I saw the thing that had been Linda Chen standing among the corpses looking up at us. It waved, and then it was gone, shrinking into the distance as the helicopter climbed into the sky. We had escaped. Danny had made sure of that. The cabin was cramped, filled with the smell of gunpowder and blood and aviation fuel. A medic worked on my chest, his hands steady despite the chaos, his voice calm as he assessed my injuries. 2 broken ribs, possible internal bleeding, concussion, survivable, probably. Sarah held Tyler's hand, both of them staring out the window at the burning city below. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "We are en route to Delta Point. Refugee center about 50 clicks east. Military has established a perimeter. You are going to be okay. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to close my eyes and let the pain carry me into unconsciousness and wake up somewhere safe, somewhere far from the horror we had just survived. But something was wrong. I noticed it first in the way the helicopter began to shudder, a vibration that did not match the rhythm of the rotors. Then the pilot's voice again strained this time. "We have a problem." I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the scream of protest from my broken ribs. Through the cockpit door, I could see the pilot hunched over his controls, his movements jerky and erratic. So the medic called out, "Sir, are you all right?" The pilot did not answer. His head twitched, once, twice. Then it rolled to the side at an angle that no living neck should allow. He turned around. His eyes were white. The medic reached for his sidearm, but he was too slow. The pilot lunged, teeth snapping, and buried his face in the medic's throat. Blood sprayed across the cabin, painting the windows, the seats, our faces. Tyler screamed. Sarah screamed. I grabbed the pistol from the medic's holster and fired. The pilot's head snapped back, a hole appearing in his forehead. He slumped over the controls, his weight pushing the stick forward. The helicopter pitched into a dive. "Hold on," I yelled, grabbing whatever I could reach. We hit the trees at an angle. Branches shattered around us, the rotors screaming as they chewed through wood and leaves. The cabin spun, tumbled, and then there was a final bone-jarring impact. Silence. I was still alive. That was my first coherent thought. Still alive despite everything. Still breathing despite the blood in my mouth and the agony in my chest and the ringing in my ears that drowned out everything else. I forced my eyes open. The helicopter was on its side, half buried in the underbrush of a forest I did not recognize. Moonlight filtered through the shattered windshield, illuminating the wreckage. The medic was dead, his throat torn out. The pilot was dead, my bullet in his brain. But Sarah was moving, and Tyler was groaning, which meant he was alive too. We crawled out of the wreckage one by one, collapsing onto the forest floor. The trees rose around us like cathedral pillars, their branches blocking out the stars. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Normal sounds, natural sounds, lies, all of them. There was nothing natural left in this world. "Is everyone okay?" Sarah asked, her voice hoarse. "Define okay," Tyler muttered. His ankle was worse now, swollen to twice its normal size, but he was breathing. He was conscious. He was alive. I sat up slowly, every movement sending fresh waves of pain through my battered body. The forest stretched in all directions, offering no landmarks, no indication of where we were or which way safety lay. "We need to move," I said. "Find shelter before daylight, figure out our next steps." Sarah nodded. But before she could respond, Tyler spoke. "Marcus, your arm." I looked down. 3 parallel gouges ran across my forearm, cutting through my jacket and into the flesh beneath. I did not remember receiving them. In the chaos of the rooftop battle, the crash, the desperate flight for survival, I had not even noticed. But I noticed now. And I noticed the way the edges of the wounds had turned black, as if the flesh itself was dying around the cuts. Sarah stared at the wounds, her medical training warring with her horror. Tyler backed away, his eyes wide. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." I looked at my arm, at the darkness spreading beneath my skin, following the paths of my veins like ink soaking into paper. It did not hurt. That was the strangest part. It felt cold, yes. Cold and distant, like looking at someone else's injury. But it did not hurt. "I have seen this before," Sarah said quietly. "In the hospital. The patients who turned. It started just like this." I met her eyes. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. The infection was inside me now, and the question was not if I would turn. It was when. Dawn broke gray and cold over a world that no longer belonged to the living. We found a pickup truck abandoned on a forest road, key still in the ignition, half a tank of gas remaining. Whoever had owned it was gone, probably one of the shambling dead we were trying so hard to avoid. I drove while Sarah navigated from a creased map we found in the glove compartment. Tyler lay in the back seat, his ruined ankle elevated, his face pale with pain and something deeper. Fear, not of the monsters outside, fear of me. I could not blame him. The black veins had spread past my elbow, now creeping toward my shoulder like roots seeking water. Every few hours I felt something shift inside my head, a whisper that was not quite words, a hunger that was not quite mine. The infection was taking hold one cell at a time, but I was still Marcus Cole, still human, still fighting, for now. Boston appeared on the horizon around midday, or what remained of it. The city was a corpse. Smoke still rose from a dozen fires that no one would ever extinguish. The Zakim Bridge had been destroyed, its cables hanging like severed tendons, its deck plunged into the harbor below. Someone had tried to contain the outbreak by cutting the city off from the mainland. They had failed, but the harbor was still there, and in the harbor boats still floated at their moorings. Some had burned or sunk, but others remained intact, waiting for owners who would never return. Our way out. We approached the waterfront through side streets, avoiding the main roads where the infected congregated in greater numbers. The going was slow, painful, exhausting. By the time we reached the marina, the sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon, and shadows stretched long across the pavement. That was when they found us. 4 of them, armed, human. Their faces hard with the particular cruelty that emerges when civilization collapses and the weak become prey for the strong. A woman lay on the ground near them, her leg twisted at an unnatural angle. She was crying, reaching toward us, begging for help. It was a trap, the same trap that had been used by desperate people since the beginning of time. "Drop your weapons," the leader said. He was a big man, bald, with a scar running down one cheek. His rifle was pointed at my chest. "Everything you have. Food, water, medicine. Drop it or die. We had been through too much, fought too hard, lost too many." I was not going to let it end like this, robbed and murdered by scavengers while salvation floated 50 feet away. I looked at Sarah. She looked at me. Something passed between us, an understanding that required no words. We moved at the same time. I threw myself to the left, drawing the leader's fire. The bullet went wide, sparking off the concrete. Sarah raised her pistol and shot the man beside him, the round taking him in the throat. He went down gurgling. Tyler, despite his injured ankle, tackled the woman on the ground before she could draw the weapon hidden under her body. They struggled, rolled, and then Tyler's hands were around her throat, squeezing with a desperation born of pure survival instinct. The leader swung his rifle toward Sarah. I hit him from the side before he could fire my broken ribs, screaming in protest, and we went down together. He was stronger than me, healthier, uninjured. He rolled on top of me, hands closing around my throat. Black spots bloomed in my vision. I could not breathe, could not fight. Then blood sprayed across my face, hot and copper-scented. Sarah stood over us, a knife in her hand, the blade buried in the leader's neck. She pulled it free, and he collapsed beside me, twitching, dying, his eyes filled with the confused disbelief of a predator who had become prey. The 4th raider ran. We let him go. Sarah stared at the blood on her hands, at the man she had killed. She had ended infected before things that had once been human but were no longer. This was different. This had been a living, breathing person who could have surrendered, could have been spared, could have chosen another path. She had killed him anyway. "I had to," she whispered. "He was going to kill you." "I know." Her eyes met mine, searching for judgment, for condemnation, for the horror she expected to see reflected back at her. She found none. "Does it matter?" she asked. "Does any of it matter anymore?" I thought of all the men I had killed in service to my country, the faces that still visited me in dreams, the weight I carried that never seemed to get lighter. "Everything matters," I said, "every choice, every life, even now, especially now." We took what supplies the raiders had and left their bodies where they fell. There was no time for burial, no energy for ceremony. The world had moved past such niceties. The boat was a 30-foot fishing vessel, old but well-maintained. I found keys in the cabin and fuel in the tank. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. We pulled away from the dock just as the first infected reached the marina. drawn by the sound of gunfire and the smell of fresh blood. They stood at the water's edge watching us go, their white eyes reflecting the dying light of the sun. They did not pursue, they did not need to. The ocean stretched before us gray and endless as we motored away from the burning city. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was nothing trying to kill us. No horde pursuing, no monsters attacking, just the gentle rock of the waves and the cry of seagulls overhead. I sat at the stern watching Boston shrink into the distance. Sarah was at the wheel, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Tyler had collapsed in the cabin, exhaustion, finally claiming him. It was over, except it was not. "Sarah," I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. "Come here." She secured the wheel and joined me. Her face was pale, drawn, aged years in a single night. "Look at the water," I said. She looked, and I saw her stiffen. In the reflection on the surface of the sea, we could see ourselves. But behind us, visible only in the water's mirror, something else loomed, a shadow. A shape that dwarfed us both, towering and terrible, with no face but somehow watching. No eyes but somehow seeing. The hunger. It was still with us. It had always been with us. Sarah stumbled back from the railing. "That is not possible. We got away. We escaped. Did we?" I reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around something cold and smooth. The black stone. I had never picked it up, never taken it from Danny's body. And yet here it was, resting against my palm, as if it had always been there, as if it had chosen me the same way it had chosen everyone else who had carried it. The infection was not just in my blood, it was in my soul. "Sarah," I said, "show me your arm." Her face crumbled. She knew. She had known since the hospital, since the creature wearing her mother's face had scratched her, since the chaos of battle, where any wound could have been the fatal one. She pulled up her sleeve. Black veins spreading from a cut on her forearm, slower than mine, but just as certain. "Tyler," she whispered. He was scratched too, by one of them on the roof. We stood in silence, the three of us, as the truth settled over us like a shroud. We were not survivors, we were carriers. Every island we landed on, every refugee camp we found, every pocket of humanity still fighting to survive. We would bring the hunger with us. We would spread it like a plague. We would become the very thing that had destroyed our world. I had been running my whole life. From the crash that killed my family. From the blood on my hands, from the loneliness I thought I deserved. But there was no running from this. There was only a choice. "What do we do?" Tyler asked. His voice was small, frightened, barely recognizable as the same young man who had tackled a raider twice his size just an hour ago. Sarah shook her head. "I do not know. I do not know any more." I looked at the stone in my hand, at the symbols that pulsed with a faint, hungry light. "We find answers," I said. "Somewhere out there, someone knows more about this than we do. The Wampanoag buried this thing once. Maybe there is a way to bury it again." "Or maybe," Sarah said quietly, "maybe some curses cannot be broken. Maybe some hungers truly are eternal." The sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. The sea darkened around us, becoming a mirror that reflected nothing but our own damned faces. And in the distance far behind us, Boston burned. My name is Marcus Cole. I survived the night of October 13th, the night the hunger woke, the night the world ended. I thought I escaped, thought I fought my way free, thought that reaching the ocean meant reaching safety. I was wrong. Every morning now I check my veins, watch the blackness spread a little further, feel the whispers grow a little louder. The hunger is patient. It has waited 400 years already. It can wait a little longer. Sarah says we should find an island, somewhere isolated, somewhere we cannot hurt anyone when the change finally comes. Tyler does not say much anymore. He just sits at the bow and stares at the water, and sometimes I catch him talking to himself in words I do not recognize, words that sound old, hungry. We are not survivors. We are the next wave. And if you are hearing this, if somehow these words reach the outside world, I need you to understand something. Do not look for us. Do not try to help us. Do not come anywhere near the waters off the New England coast, because we are out here, drifting, waiting, changing. And the hunger inside us, the thing that has slept beneath Massachusetts soil for 4 centuries, the curse that the Wampanoag tried to bury and we were foolish enough to dig up. It will not stop until it has consumed everything. This is my last broadcast, my last warning, my last human act. Remember my name. Remember what happened here. And when the night comes, when you hear scratching at your door, when you see faces at your window that look almost like people you used to know, run, run, and do not stop. Because we are coming, and we are so very hungry.